Hi there, I'm so glad you're able to join us for part 2 of our series, Signs of the End. So let's get straight into it. Sign number 2 are the wars that have been fought in the 20th and the 21st century. Let's go back to our anchor text from our previous sign number 1. That is Matthew chapter 24 from verses 6 to 8. Let me read them again. You are going to hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, because these things must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these events are the beginning of labor pains. Notice the word labor pains that we have highlighted last time. Labor pains denote the increase in frequency and intensity of pains before a child is birthed. In the same way, when it comes to the wars that Jesus is talking about, he speaks about the increase in frequency and intensity of these wars that have taken place. And so the first rebuttal that you will give me is, what makes World War I and World War II different from all the wars that have been fought in the previous centuries, in the previous millennia? That is a good point. So let's get into that. The key to this is verse 7, which says, for nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. You see, the wars that happened in World War I, World War II, and the rest of the 20th and 21st century are nations rising up against each other. This is so different from everything else that has been fought in previous centuries. In World War I, for example, we lost 10 million people in World War I. In World War II, approximately 55 to 60 million people died in World War II. The amount of loss of life in these two wars far exceed the loss of life in any other wars in previous centuries. But what makes these wars distinct is that the wars that are fought in previous centuries were wars that were fought by empires that were trying to rule and dominate various parts of the world. For example, we have the Babylonian Empire from 1895 BC to 539 BC. They ruled and reigned a particular part of the world for 1,356 years. And then we have the Medo-Persians. They ruled for 220 years, from 550 BC to 330 BC. Then we have the Grecian Empire, which included Alexander the Great, who ruled major parts of Asia Minor and Europe. They ruled for 186 years, from 332 BC to 146 BC. Then we have the Roman Empire, the mighty Roman Empire, who ruled from 31 BC to 1453 BC. That's 1,422 years. These four empires were prophesied in the book of Daniel, in the Bible, and they ruled major parts of the world. Then you have the Mongoloid Empire. They ruled from 1206 AD to 1368 AD for 162 years. I'm sure you're familiar with Genghis Khan, who was part of the Mongoloid Empire. So for a large part of human history, we have all of these empires that I've mentioned that ruled a large parts of the world, that subjugated the people of those areas that they ruled. These are just some of the empires that I mentioned, but there are many, many more. But the two world wars in the 20th century and all the other wars fought were wars fought between nations, nations against nations, kingdom against kingdom. 76 years ago, World War II ended. That wasn't too long ago. We know a lot of people today in our grandparents' generation who are still alive from World War II. And when Jesus says kingdom against kingdom, he means groups against groups, ethnicities against ethnicities. In the 20th century, 187 million people died from wars. Not just World War I and II, but from the Vietnam War and all the other wars we have had. That far supersedes any other century in terms of wars. The 20th century was the bloodiest century in terms of conflict between nations, nation rising against nation, kingdom against kingdom. This is what makes the wars and the conflict in the 20th and the 21st century different from every other century. But the Bible prophesies that World War III is coming. It'll be the biggest war ever fought. I want to read from you Revelation 9:13-18. This is what John saw in terms of the coming World War III. The sixth angel blew his trumpet. From the four horns of the golden altar that is before God, I heard a voice say to the sixth angel who blew the trumpet, "Release the four angels bound at the great river Euphrates." So the four angels who were prepared for the day, the hour, the month, and year were released to kill a third of the human race. The number of mounted troops was 200 million. I heard their number. This is how I saw the horses and their riders in the vision. They had breastplates that were fiery red, hyacinth blue, and sulfur yellow. The heads of the horses were like the heads of lions, and from their mouths came fire, smoke, and sulfur. A third of the human race was killed by these three plagues, by the fire, the smoke, and the sulfur that came from their mouths. And so John is shown this war that is to take place in the future, and he describes this war in the language that he knows. Obviously, in his day, he didn't know anything about nuclear, chemical, or biological warfare. So he describes the war that he sees in the language that he knows. But just in reading this text, it is clear that this is a modern day war. This war involves a 200 million man army coming from the east. Now, back in John's day, it wasn't possible to have a 200 million man army because that wasn't even the population of the world. But today, we know that China, for example, has a 2 million man army. And so there is a war coming, World War III, that is going to be the war to end all wars, and a third of the human race is killed in this war. The current population of the world is 8 billion people. A third of that is 2.6 billion people that are wiped out by this nuclear, chemical, and biological war. This war is coming, friends. But there is another war that you and I cannot see. It is an invisible war. This is the war for human souls. You and I are in the battle for our lives. When Jesus Christ came 2,000 years ago, he went to the cross voluntarily to defeat our enemy of Satan, of sin, of death, and of hell. He fought the ultimate war for us, and by his precious blood at the cross, he has granted us victory over our ultimate enemies of sin and Satan and death and hell. If you trust in Jesus, if you say that Jesus is your King who won the war, who won the victory for you at the cross, then you are on the right side of history. The signs of the wars that have taken place in the 20th and 21st century is once again a prominent sign that the return of Jesus is to take place sometime in the near future. Are you ready for the return of Jesus? Trust in him today, because he has won the ultimate war. He has won the ultimate battle for you and I. Trust in him, because only in Jesus Christ are you safe from the judgment of God. Mankind are going to eventually destroy each other, but God will stop human history before mankind destroys each other. Jesus Christ is coming again in the clouds. Are you on his side? Trust in him. Trust in what he did for you at the cross, because there is a war, an invisible war currently going on for the souls of men and women. And if you trust in Jesus, your soul is safe in his arms. You will be given a resurrected body, and you will rule and reign with him on the earth in the new millennial kingdom when he comes to set up his throne. I hope you have been compelled by this video. If you have any questions, please place a comment on the comment section. Please like this video and subscribe it. But we'll see you again in 2 weeks' time with sign 3 of our series, Signs of the End. Take care.